Okay, I'm over here behind the Ford. Okay, told you in the last video that I was going to have the frame cut in this video, and there were some skeptics about how I was going to do it, but it's done, and this is how I did it. And what I've done is I'm going to be cleaning it out a little bit. I cleaned out the junk from the sand and stuff that fell off when I removed the rear axle. What I did is I've just kind of leveled it out. I put a couple of jack stands in the back, and they're not going to be able to stay there while I extend the frame out, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. But what I did is just try to level up the two frame rails as close as possible to each other. Then what I'm going to do is figure out exactly where I'm going to cut it, you know, mark my lines, and then stabilize the front of the frame with something so that I can cut it off. And the rear, because I have to move the rear back to get the extensions in, and that's why those jack stands can't stay like that. I will have to do that as I continue along, either get a long straight edge, and I'm going to have the lines on the floor so that I can go off of that, but I want to get it in there. Now what my intention is to do is to put them gusset plates in there after I get it cut. What I will do is put them gusset plates in there with the appropriate gap in it, and clamp the frame in there so that I know that the frame is straight and true using them gusset plates along with the marks on the floor, and a straight edge across the top of it so that I can keep that as straight as possible as I extend it out. But anyways, I'll bring you back. Okay, I just wanted to bring you over. What I've done is brought one of them over and stuck it into the frame, and man, I can't tell you how happy I am with this fit. It's right on there. So I'm gonna bring the other one over, do the same thing, test fit it, maybe swap them around, see which one fits better in which side, even if there is a difference, and if there is, I'll label them so that I know which one goes where. But anyways, I'm gonna start laying out the cut now. What I'm gonna do in the front, because the front is stationary, I've got them jack stands in the back, and it's kind of sitting down on those jack stands. But let me tell you something, I actually had to shim the jack stands, and that would be an issue because I have this floor, my floors are always tapered down to the drains. So first of all, I don't have enough jack stands to support the thing entirely. But the second issue would be that the jack stands probably wouldn't be the right height. You know, there's like a inch between the clicks on, or the pegs. Nah, let's not call them pegs. Let's call them cogs. There's probably an inch between the cogs on our jack stand, and you can't get them right. So what I was thinking about doing, because this thing, the front of it is going to be stationary, I'm actually thinking about building a cross support stand in there, because that will be stationary and stay. So I could build a stand in there that it would rest on, and it would be stationary. Now the back, because it has to expand back, will have to move, so whatever I use back there can't be stationary. It logically has to be moved. If, like the jack stands, it's in that position now, but they would actually have to go back 2 feet. So the height is going to change because, again, the floor is tapered down towards the drain. So the farther I go back, the shorter the distance of the jack stand height would be. But anyways, I'll bring you back when I get it all figured out, laid out, etc. Over the back of the haul truck, and what I just did was I had a couple of pieces of angle iron laying around. These were old pieces that I had cut up off of some racks that I demolished or cut up for material, scrap material. So I had a couple of pieces of that angle iron laying around, and what I did is cut it off evenly. They had been torch cut it off evenly on the bottom, brought it over, marked out the holes, and I'm going to use these pieces of angle iron for the stands or support of the front of the truck. On the back, because the back is gonna, the front of the truck will, after I make the cut in the frame, the front of the truck will stay stationary, the back will have to move back. So I'm gonna have to reposition the back after I get it, the cuts made. I will use jack stands or whatever. I'm also probably going to use the gantry crane, sling this, and I will move it back, keeping it parallel with my lines that I've marked on the floor. I'm not sure if I told you this in another video. What I also did was drew out a string line on this thing and put a mark. Some people will probably dispute this mark, but it's on the overhead door. The overhead doors are going to move. It's not going to be open before I use marks, but I drew the string line out, put it on a mark on the overhead door, so when I get done, I can take a mark from the front part of the frame and run the string line, making sure that this is running parallel and true with the line that was supposed to be there to begin with. I will also, there is a potential, you know, for, I just sat the angle iron on the floor, marked the holes, and brought it over, bolted it up. I pounded it down like setting a piece of stock in a vise on a mill or something. I pounded it down to make sure on the floor, but what I will also do is take a precise measurement from the floor up to the top of the frame rail in case when I cut that it does drop a little bit. It shouldn't, but I just want to double check myself and make sure that that doesn't happen. If it did drop, it would throw off that string line that I had taken out for it. So I just want to kind of double, triple check myself on everything before I make the cut. Bring you back. Let's talk about this frame alignment for a little bit here. You know, I've kind of delved into showing you what I'm doing as far as lines on the floor to the original frame, a string line back to the door, etc. This is all in the effort to keep the truck in line with its original setup. However, one of the things that I have to deal with, well, there's going to be a couple of things that I have to deal with. But the first, let's discuss the first one. Got to understand that I never actually drove this truck. I mean, we picked this truck up from the farmer, put it on the trailer and unloaded it out behind the shop, and I drove it, not drove it, but steered it while it was being towed into the shop. But I never really drove this truck to make sure that it drove properly to begin with. In other words, you know, was it the frame aligned properly to begin with? All I'm doing is trying to set this frame up, back up to the way it was originally. But I'm not guaranteed or not assured that the thing was proper to begin with. Sorry, the light just went out. Battery powered light. But I'm not assured that the frame was aligned properly to begin with. So one of the things all I can do is set it back up to as close to possible as the way it was originally. Let me delve into the second thing. The issue with is there's going to be an air suspension back here, and when you put an air suspension on a truck or a car, and it's going to be, the backside is going to have an airbag in it. So basically what I'm going to do is try and cut off these leaf springs and design a thing that a bracket that will come over here. I'm not sure if bracket's the right word, but a bracket that will come over here to support the airbag underneath a plate or underneath the frame rails of the truck. That means that the front piece is going to be fixed by the leaf spring shackle housing, but the rear of the suspension is going to be floating on airbags. And if you have ever seen a truck suspension or a rear axle that has air ride or airbags on the rear end, you know that it's kind of unstable because basically that axle is floating on airbags. So what they do is they have some means of cross-supporting the axle to keep the axle from shifting on the air suspension. What I'm going to try and do is set up some means of, when I build this thing, to be able to adjust that axle or keep that axle rigid. In other words, if I do this, build this thing, and it's not tracking right, or the axle isn't aligned with the frame, I can realign it by using these adjusting bars to make the axle track correctly with the frame. So I'm doing all of this, setting up the string lines, chalk lines on the floor and everything, assuming that the original frame was true and proper to begin with. But if it wasn't, or if I don't get this thing in there perfectly, the air suspension in there perfectly, and the axle isn't aligned properly, or even if the axle is aligned properly but the airbags allow it to shift from I think they call it thrust shifting or thrust alignment, I have a means of correcting it with that. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Again, you know, I've delved into how I'm going to align the frame, but that's not to say that the frame was aligned properly to begin with. So I just wanted that point to be brought out, and that I'm taking that into consideration, and I will accommodate that being able to align that rear axle if it should be out of a line, or being able to stiffen that rear axle if the air suspension in the back makes it too flimsy. Okay, we're over here at the back of the Ford haul truck. So this is the last time that you might be seeing this in one piece as its original length. Bring you back. I'm going to leave this section of the video audio free. You should be able to tell what I'm doing from my actions. Gonna get a cutoff wheel to finish it. It misses going through the side rail by about 3/4 of an inch. Okay, here's side 2, passenger side laid out. I've got to tweak my guide piece of steel a little bit, but as you can see, driver's side is cut, and I'm going to be starting on the passenger side. Okay, I've just kind of test fitted. I've got the inner liners kind of clamped in there. They're not in position exactly, and I just kind of slipped the outer rails over that are going to be welded in for the extension. Just going to push this thing back a little bit to kind of get just a feel for how it's going to look, how much room I'm going to actually have. So I'll bring you back. There's a lot of, before I cut you off, there's a lot of prep work that has to be done. It's all got to be taken apart. The inner rails have got to be taken apart. Those cuts, where I cut it with the cutoff wheel on the bottom of it, has got to be ground down so it's flush with the rest of the cuts. The frame rails have to be beveled so that they will accept a weld and stuff like that. So it's all got to be taken apart. I'm just kind of test fitting it in place, just to see how it's going to look, get some measurements on it and stuff like that. Okay, back over here to the haul truck. Where I left you off, I had showed you how that I had test fitted these things up. Now, they weren't test fitted up precisely, but they were just test fitted up. There was a couple of places on the well, not on the top, because I used the circular saw to cut off the top, but on the bottom where I used a cutoff wheel on the small angle grinder, there was a little bump out there. Logically, the cutoff wheel on that angle grinder is a lot thinner than the blade on that circular saw, that metal cutting blade. So what I did is I've gone through, I've got angle grinder with a 36 grit flapper disc on it, and I'm going through and I'm putting a bevel on it, cleaning it up, getting all of this paint and stuff off of it. And I will do the same thing to the other side. Now, I have not set this in yet. What I've got to do is get some shims for the jacks and everything, run string lines out. But what I wanted to do is just take it back apart, and so that I could grind these surfaces and get them prepped for welding. Then once I've got it all prepped up, what I'll do is I'll start setting, using plumb bob with my lines that I have marked out on the floor, and the string line going back to set everything precisely as the way it was before. But anyways, prep is going. It's going to be part of a shop update, but I did not have a power lead here for the welder, to bring the welder over. That's one of the things that I had to do, and I have done it. That will be shown in the shop update. I just finished it a little while ago after lunch. I brought the MIG over here, fired it up to make sure that it was good, put a voltage meter on it and everything, but we are set to go. We're set to go as far as the frame has been cut, the pieces have been got. I've got everything. It's just a matter of prepping the two ends and then setting the back half to the front half so that it's precisely the way it was before I cut the frame. In other words, the straightness with the chalk line on the floor and the string line that's going back. But anyways, I'll bring you back as I progress. So we're back over here to the truck. In the last clip, I had talked about running that power lead over here and kind of showed you bringing that MIG welder over here to make sure that it worked, which could be misleading. My intentions on welding this thing is to tack the TIGs in, or TIG the tacks in, better put. I will use a TIG welder to tack it out, get the rails in place and straight that way. using tacks with a TIG welder. I might even TIG in the root pass of it. I'm beveling it out so that it's going to have to be filled in so that I can grind it off so you won't be able to see it. Again, you're not supposed to be welding frames. So probably TIG the root in, TIG the tacks, TIG the root in, and then finish it up with a MIG welder, just so that it can be ground off so that it's unrecognizable. I just didn't want to mislead you or some people thinking that I brought the MIG welder over because I was going to use that to tack it out or to MIG the whole thing out. It will be TIGged. But anyways, that'll be the end of this chapter. Thanks for watching, guys. Hit that like button, subscribe.